I'm Madison. I'm from the Student Learning and Support Service. So SLSS, we're located in the Central Library over there, and we essentially provide a bunch of different study-related support services for you guys, including the Learning Lounge and a bunch of online resources and guides and a few courses and things like that that you guys can complete. And we also have the Learning Buddies as well, which I will actually go over today in this workshop. Well, lecture, seminar, I guess. And then I'll let Kayla introduce herself too.
Yes. Hello. Excellent. Sounds like my mic's coming through. That's always good. Yes, I'm Kayla. So I'm a librarian here at Flinders. So I work mostly in the big library that's just out that way, Central Library, which I'm sure you'll find yourselves there at some point during orientation. It's pretty hard to miss. We also have libraries around Flinders as well. So I sometimes work out at the city as well. We have Sturt, Medical, Tonsley and so forth. But as part of my job, I often go out to classes and talk to students about researching for information and understanding information, the research process as it relates to their discipline. But obviously I'm here today to talk a bit more about AI and research and how those two sort of intersect here while you're at uni. So yeah, that's me, I guess.
Cool. All right. Well, oh, yes. Kind of already went through that sort of stuff. Yes, so today this session is going to focus mostly on how you can use AI to support your learning and studies here at university and how to do that in a effective way, in a safe way, in an academic, in line with academic integrity, things like that. So we're going to go through a few of those concepts today. But before we go any further, I just want to acknowledge that we are meeting here today on the traditional lands of the Kaurna peoples, and I would like to pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. So we'll start off by talking, well, Kayla will start off by talking a little bit about artificial intelligence and what it is, especially in this day and age where we have our fancy generative AI tools. And then we'll both sort of go back and forth a little bit as we go through a few of the tools that you can use here at Flinders that you have access to, and then how to use it effectively as well for your studies. So I think that used to be a survey, but we'll just not worry about that today. So I will let Kayla take the floor. Go ahead.
Excellent. Okay, so yeah, what is artificial intelligence? So I'm going to explain it in a very, hopefully nice and simplistic kind of way. But I'll start with a few definitions first. So artificial intelligence, broadly speaking, so we could say that they are computer systems that perform tasks. There could be many different kinds of tasks. There could be navigation, there could be generative, that usually require human intelligence. So it's the technology that can do human things, kind of. And the second definition that I'm providing is one for generative AI specifically. And that's because we talk a lot about generative AI. So this is a type of artificial intelligence that creates new content based on data that it has been trained on. So this second sort of form of AI, this generative AI, is often what we're talking about in this day and age when we're talking about AI, because we're often talking about those tools like ChatGPT, Copilot, which have become really popular, right? So they've informed much of the discourse that is sort of out there. So that's what we'll be focusing a lot on today, is that kind of AI, and because that's popular use and that's what you can use to support your studies at Flinders. Oh, sorry. We'll do a little swappy swap. Excellent. Okay, so how does generative AI work? So this is a very sort of simple kind of breakdown of what happens to make these tools work. So the models that these tools are trained on are trained to generate text about data that has been gathered. So data is collected and processed. So for example, with ChatGPT by OpenAI, that was trained on so much data and information from websites across the internet, right? Then what happens is the model, so the underlying model, will try to identify patterns in all of that data that it's been trained on. So for example, when it comes to generating text content, it's looking for the most likely words that often come after other words, how sentences have come up over and over again. So it's looking for those patterns and becoming more familiar with what the information out there is saying, and it's generating to kind of, I guess, mimic that in a sense as well. But really importantly in this process, to make sure that AI is staying on track as much as possible, at this stage there's usually quite a lot of human sort of intervention there, where there's like a reinforcement kind of learning type thing, right? So the humans will provide feedback to the tool to keep it on track, to make sure it's not going way off as well.
Just making things up.
Exactly. So that's how the tool works, but how does it work in the sense of when you're using something like ChatGPT or Copilot? So you'll enter a prompt, you'll ask it a question or tell it to do something or create an image for you. The next step is that it will analyse the words and the context of your prompt. So it looks at that first. What are you telling it to do? It's then looking for matching patterns. So based on the data that it has been trained on, it's then starting to formulate its response to your prompt, right? Or to generate what you've asked it for. So it's going into that data and looking for those patterns and generating the text or the image based on that. Sometimes as well, depending on the tool or depending on the version of the tool that you're using, it will go out and search across the web. So it will do a bit of a research across freely available information as well. And then based on those patterns and based on what it finds out on free websites, it'll produce you a response, basically. Making sense? Excellent. So there are a large amount of AI tools that are out there in the world today. At Flinders Uni, though, there are some tools that you do have specific access to that we will talk about a little bit more today. So I'll give a brief introduction to the first two and then hand over to Maddie as well. And we'll go through these and do some demonstrating for you later on how they all work. But essentially the first one we'll mention is Copilot Chat. So you probably know about Copilot Chat. It's kind of Microsoft's answer, I guess, to ChatGPT. So it is powered by OpenAI's model. It's trained on massive amounts of data from the internet. And it can generate texts and images as well. More advanced versions of Copilot are embedded within Microsoft applications as well. Here at Flinders, though, as Flinders students, you do have access to Copilot Chat with, I forget what the word is called, but basically it's a private, secure, what's that called?
It's like a tenancy protection.
Protection.
Organization, enterprise level sort of
That's
protection.
That's it, an enterprise agreement. We have an enterprise agreement for Copilot Chat. What that means is that when you're logged in with your Flinders account and using the tool, you're given protections. So your prompts are secure and private, and what you enter is not being used to train the underlying AI model. So it's a bit of added security. So it's kind of our recommendation if you want to use a all-purpose AI tool, something you can definitely experiment with. The second one I'll introduce to you is changing gears a little bit. So this is called Prima Research Assistant, or just Research Assistant, or you can just call it Flinders Library, either way. But basically this is a generative search-based AI tool that exists within Flinders Library. So what this tool does is a little bit more narrow than your general AI tools like ChatGPT and Copilot. But what it actually does is it allows you to enter a natural language question. So you can answer any question, ask it a research question particularly, and it will search across the academic sources the library subscribes to, and it will generate a summary or an answer to your question based on those sources. So a bit different. It's not searching the wide web for information, it's searching library resources and big wealth of academic information that's out there as well. I'll demonstrate that to you a little bit later, but yes.
And I will introduce the Learning Buddies. I will introduce them essentially as my children. That's pretty much the running joke here. I was a part of a small team that developed 2 AI tools. It's done through Copilot, so you access it in the same way that you access Copilot Chat, and I will show you how to find them and what they look like. But there's two learning buddies. One is Study Buddy, one is Feedback Buddy, and they do slightly different things. But the really important part is that both of them are trained on our SLSS resources and online guides and the information that we've put together for you in a bunch of PDFs and stuff you can find. We've actually given those to the agent. That's the knowledge that they work on. But they're also designed with very specific guardrails in mind about, keeping in mind things like academic integrity, encouraging you to work or complete your own work, and guiding you towards your own self skill development and learning, rather than sort of just doing the task for you, which is what general AI tools will usually do. So I will show you Study Buddy in a little bit more detail, which is more of like a general FAQ agent. You can ask it questions about general academic skills, study skills, time management, planning, things like that. And then if we have time at the end, I'm hoping that we do, I'll show you Feedback Buddy, which is more of an agent where you actually upload a PDF of an assignment that you've written, and it will give you very specific, detailed feedback on your writing skills and things like that, and give you some suggestions on what you might want to look at and review, but to do it yourself rather than sort of just editing it for you, if that makes sense. I will show that to you if we have time, because it's pretty cool. Yes, we have a question?
Thank you. Excuse me. Can you differentiate the Copilot chat and Primo Research Assistant? What are the differences?
What are the differences between Copilot and Primo Research Assistant? Yeah. Do you want to maybe explain a little bit about it?
I can, yeah. So Copilot Chat, very big AI tool. So I guess the purpose of Copilot and tools similar to it is to generate content for you, whether that's text or an image. Primo Research Assistant is very much a search tool or a research tool that has generative AI technology powering it, so to speak. I'll show you what that looks like in practice, but essentially it's a research assistant. So it helps you with your library research. Copilot Chat won't be able to help you with your library research in the same sort of way. So they do very, very different things. But I guess they're a very good example in a sense, because one is, so Copilot, very big tool that's out there, whereas Primo Research Assistant has a very specific task that it has been designed to do as well. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit, but I think when we actually show you the tool and what it can do, it'll make a lot more sense as well.
Yeah. It's very cool. Primo Research Assistant is fantastic. I even use it myself. It was very handy. Cool. So other AI tools that you've probably heard of are ChatGPT. Who's used ChatGPT? Show of hands. Yeah, I think pretty much everyone. Yeah. Has anyone used Gemini? Here and there, yeah. What about Claude? Do we have any Claude fans in the room? Me, 100%, number one. Second only, obviously, to my children, the learning buddies. But I'm a parent, I have to pick my favorites. But Claude is also quite good as well. Bearing in mind that these are general AI tools, which means that they haven't been built with the same guardrails around it as like Primo Research Assistant with a very specific task and thing that it's trying to do for you. Same with the learning buddies. But they are obviously free and readily available options as well. Who's used Grammarly? Anyone? Yeah? Yeah. I have used Grammarly as well. There's that free version, kind of does that spell and grammar check for you. There is obviously the paid option as well, which will actually like rephrase sentences for you and do all that sort of stuff as well, which we probably don't recommend doing in terms of completing your own work for yourself and academic integrity sort of stuff, which we will get into a little bit later. But Grammarly, especially the free version, is also a very useful tool for your writing purposes. All right, I'll sort of take this section. So when you're doing your assignments here at uni, and you want to use AI to sort of support that assignment preparation or your learning or even understanding concepts within your courses and things like that, there's something that's important to sort of keep in mind beforehand. So before doing it, you should definitely double check whether or not you can use AI tools for this assignment or for this task, whatever. Usually, and I will show you in a minute the scale, the little icon that you'll probably get used to seeing, but usually in your assignment instructions, there will be something in there telling you about what is permitted AI use for this assignment. And there will be some differences. So there will be, you can use it for brainstorming, but you can't use it for writing, or you can use it for helping out with your writing, but you can't use it to just generate the entire thing for you. So there's a few sort of distinctions that you need to keep in mind before you actually use any of these. There might also be some information about what tools you can use. So your topic coordinators might say, yeah, we're happy for you to use the Learning Buddies, but I don't really want you using general tools like ChatGPT and Gemini, Claude, things like that. The other thing to keep in mind is records and stuff to keep and sort of provide potentially. So we always recommend keeping draft versions of your assignments as you're working through them, showing your preparation process, keep your notes and things like that. It just helps to demonstrate the work that you have done in the preparation of this assignment, especially if you have used AI in any way. It can help just sort of show to your topic coordinator, if you're ever asked, how you actually prepared this assignment yourself independently. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then also acknowledging your use of AI. So we will go into AI acknowledgements and stuff as well today. It's highly recommended. It's not always in your assignment instructions that you have to do this, but I would say just as a general rule, I would just do it regardless because it's better for you. So yeah, like I said, each topic and sometimes each very specific assignments might have very specific guidelines around what you can and cannot do with AI for that assignment. So it's always really important that you check. And if you're ever unsure, just email your topic coordinator and say, am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to use this? This is what I was going to use it for. Is this okay? And they'll usually be more than happy to explain to you what you can and cannot do. Is that all good? Yeah? Cool. So this is the icon that I was talking about. You'll probably start to see this quite a bit. We are highly encouraging TCs to sort of put this in your assignment instructions with where they want your AI use to be. But you can see that there's sort of a bit of a distinction or a spectrum of what you can and cannot use it for. So obviously at this side we've got no AI, which means under no circumstances do not use AI at all in the preparation of this assessment piece. But probably the one that you will see more commonly is the AI-assisted idea generation and structuring, which is sort of, you can use it to brainstorm ideas, to structure your ideas. So if you're like, I want to write an essay on, what's one of the examples I do later? ADHD, theories of ADHD. You might say, this is what I want to write about. I want to talk about this specific theory in comparison to another theory. Can you help me sort of figure out an outline or the best way to structure this information in an essay? So that would be an okay use in this little slice of the spectrum. Then you've got sort of towards the green, you've got AI-assisted editing, which is where you're allowed to use it to sort of edit and rephrase your sentences and stuff. And then obviously right at the end, you've got full AI. I would be genuinely surprised if there were any assessment pieces across the entire university that are sitting in the full AI green section there, unless you're maybe doing an assignment where you're actually having to critically evaluate AI output or something like that, and then you would be allowed to generate AI output and then evaluate it. I would be really surprised if you see anything green there. Is this pretty clear? Yeah. You can find this on our website. There's a page that talks about this in more detail and goes through each of the different slices of the spectrum and explains what you can and cannot do. So we do go into the acknowledgement of AI again a little bit later, but just as a sort of introduction to it. What you'll essentially do is at the end of your assignment, either before your reference list or sometimes after your reference list, it doesn't really matter where you put it, but usually at the end of your assignment, you'll just say, I acknowledge that I used ChatGPT or the Learning Buddies or something like that in the preparation of this assignment. And then you'll sort of describe a few bits of information about how you used it, and some of the, maybe like an example of a prompt that you used as well, just to demonstrate the type of use that you used it for. This is also, you won't necessarily have to put screenshots of the conversation that you've had with the AI at the end of your assignment, but it's useful to keep things like this or keep records of this anyway, in case you're asked by your TC to explain a bit further about how you used it. And if you use Copilot, because you have your student account and things like that, any conversations that you have with Copilot will actually be saved in the Copilot platform. So you can always go back and find them if you need to and if you're ever asked. Do we have any questions about acknowledging AI or anything like that? Cool, awesome. Yes, you have a question? Yeah.
So just for clarification, it's not going to be part of the reference. It's going to be either before or after?
Yeah, it's like its own separate thing. Where you actually put it before or after doesn't really matter. I mean, there might be instructions that you have to put it before, whatever. It's just usually at the end of whatever written piece of work you have. So like an essay, you just put it after the conclusion or whatever, yeah. If your TC wants it in a specific place, they will tell you. No worries. Okay. Let's just have a look if I think we're on to, yeah, cool. All right, so this is where we get into the demo part, which is going to be a little bit more fun. We get to actually show you how some of these things work. But in terms of how you can use Gen AI tools to improve your studying and your learning, obviously you don't have to just use it for things like assignment preparation. You can actually use it to understand complex ideas, terminology, specific to your discipline, whatever you're going into. Obviously things like analyzing and brainstorming certain topics. Planning and drafting outlines is a very useful way in which you can use AI as well. If you're using something like Primo Research Assistant, you can use it to find relevant and reliable references. You can also use it for things like checking your language, grammar, writing style. Feedback Buddy is very helpful for that. And then you can also use it for things like revision tools such as flashcards or practice questions for exams and things like that as well. Summarizing text on a web page is also something that I find really useful. If you use Edge, they've got the little Copilot thing in Edge where you can just ask it, can you please just summarize what's on this web page? And it can save you many, many, many hours of reading, sometimes dry content. Obviously, it's always important to cross-check the information you get from AI because, as we all know, it can sometimes very confidently get things wrong. But it's still a very useful way to just sort of get started. All right, so I might just switch over now and show you a couple of the things that you can do. So if you're wanting to access Copilot Chat, what you can do is you can type in M365 Copilot Chat to get there. I would recommend doing it this way. So this is how you can access the Learning Buddies, and then if you access the Learning Buddies, it will take you to Copilot Chat anyway. And then you can save it as a little tab in your browser, and you can always get to it from there. So you can click on this little 24/7 study support here. This is a little icon of the Learning Buddies. If you click on this, it will take you to this page here, which I already had opened, but that's okay. And this is the page where you can access the Learning Buddies. So you can see here that there's Feedback Buddy and there's Study Buddy. When you're first opening these, it will prompt you to add them to your M365 environment. Once you've done that the first time, you don't need to do it again. It will always sit there. So if you want to ask Study Buddy a question, you just click to access this one. And by the way, if you add Study Buddy, but then you want to use Feedback Buddy, you'd have to go back to that page to then also add Feedback Buddy. So, but once you do it, so this is my Copilot here. And you can see I've already got Feedback Buddy and Study Buddy in there because they're my children, so obviously I have to keep them there. But if it was my first time opening it, it would come up with a little like thing saying, do you want to add it? And then you would have Study Buddy here. But I'm actually going to show you the general Copilot chat first because you do also have access to that. So once you get into this environment, this is essentially how you access all of these. So up here, where it says New Chat, this is the general Copilot chat, so not any of the Learning Buddies. It can be a little confusing, so I'm going to go through it as much as I can today to make it clear. So when you're in General Copilot, you might want to use it for something like planning your time. So you can ask it to make me a study plan for an essay due in 14 days. It is 1,500 words. It's always so much pressure when you're typing in front of people. I normally type much faster than this, but I make way more mistakes, so I'm trying to make it seem like I can type really well. So I have 2 days a week that is not how you spell week, to work on it, and I cannot work on Sundays because I have a part-time job or something like that. So, as you can see here, it's done a really good job. So it understands what the goal is, that you want to do it in 14 days, basically doing 2 days per week, no Sundays, and it outlines pretty well what you might want to start with. So on day 1, you would be reading the essay question, identifying the themes and topics you need to do, maybe create a simple outline, which you could also probably use Copilot to help with as well. Then the next day, you'd probably do some deep research using Primo Research Assistant. I love that tool. I think it's fantastic. And then you might start drafting things like your thesis statement and stuff like that. So that's one way in which you might use it. But you can, or I might actually say, before we go into the next one, even though this is great, this output is fantastic, obviously, it's very helpful and it's useful starting point, it is always important, and they put it down here in a very small spot down here, it might be incorrect. It is always important that you look over anything that you get from any AI tool, even the Learning Buddies, even though they've been obviously curated very specifically to be good and reliable and safe for you to use, it is always important that you evaluate the output that you get from anything. So you might notice, even though there is no errors with this one, but you might notice that it's actually not outlined this very well for you, or maybe it didn't take into consideration the not working Sundays or something like that, and it put up here that day 4 would be Sunday, and you're like, well, I can't do Sundays, I told you that. So it's always important just to read it over, make sure that it's actually correct. Yes?
If we use AI this way to create a slide, do we need to cite this in the reference list, or because this isn't actually generating anything to do with essay, it's our time management?
That's a fantastic question. Honestly, what I would do personally, I would still say I did use AI and things like planning my time and organization and stuff like that. Most TCs will be like, that's fine, I have no issues with that. But I think it's always the safer bet to just acknowledge any AI use at all. Obviously, the more important one is if you used it for your assignment, if that makes sense. Yeah. Yes?
Just a quick question, Anna, about this. Do you need to have an account for it?
Yes, you do,
Yeah.
but you'll use your Flinders login. I forgot to mention that, sorry. So,
I just want to because I'm about to start on Monday, on Monday. So I thought I'd just come and see what I have to do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So I thought I'd just ask.
Yeah. No.
Ask if I need to create an account.
Yes. Yes, no, great question. And I forgot to mention that. So when you're using Copilot or the Learning Buddies who are also in Copilot, you will need to use your Flinders account. So So it'll be your online login. Do you have your FAN information yet? No?
I have to like
Yeah. Yeah.
My learning kind of can help with the one time.
Yes.
So can make with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the login that you'll get to get into your like learning online flow sort of area when you get into this is called the Okta dashboard. What you use to log into this will all be tied to a Microsoft account, and that's the account that you'll use.
I just raised my hand to ask.
No, that's a perfect question. If you try to access the Learning Buddies, by the way, without being logged into your Flinders account, it'll just tell you that you don't have permission to access it. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. Cool. Do we have any other questions about this? Yeah?
In the input you put here, it's not focused on a specific topic, it's just a general.
Yeah.
So if I get my assignment instruction,
Mm-hmm.
can I copy it here and then it will be more specific to my assignment?
Technically, yes. Yes, you can do that. Yeah. And I would actually, that is a recommended way in which I think that you can use it quite well. So you could put your assignment instructions in there and say, can you break this down for me? Can you create an outline or a time management schedule to get this assignment done? Yeah, that's perfectly fine. You would just acknowledge that, obviously. Yeah. Was there a question at the back?
After we graduate, can we still use our friend and account at Tinder?
What was that, sorry? Account at Flinders?
After graduate,
After you graduate.
Oh.
Tinder account?
No, so after you graduate, you'll sort of get switched over into, what is it called, alumni? Yeah, so you won't be able to access these tools once you're no longer enrolled as a student. So you need to be enrolled, yeah. Yeah. Great questions. Cool, so another way in which you might choose to use this, the general Copilot, is to understand like a complex concept, for example. So you might ask it to explain the concept of cognitive psychology, and you can see that I already did this earlier today. But I don't know why it's done that. There we go. All right. Now, I'll show you probably later when I show you Study Buddy, I'll show you how Study Buddy won't necessarily answer this question, and I'll tell you why soon. But General Copilot will obviously answer this question. It's the same as if you put this into ChatGPT, for example. But you can see here, this is where it gets even more important for you to be checking the accuracy of the information that you're getting. So cognitive psychology, I am a cognitive psychologist, so I can tell you whether or not this is accurate. It is the study of how people think, learn, remember, pay attention, solve problems, make decisions. That's pretty accurate to me. And mental processes happening inside the mind. Yep. Yeah, so it's broken it down pretty well. Attention, memory, perception, problem-solving, decision-making. Yeah. So this is one of the areas in which you might start to notice inaccurate information. And we call that hallucinations, when the agent very confidently tells you the wrong thing. Sometimes you can just sort of check it and be like, hey, you said this, but I don't think that that's, What's important to do, especially in your courses, if you're trying to understand a concept for one of your courses, is to just check back with your course materials. If there's something that you're a bit confused about still, and maybe it's given you some information you're not quite sure about, you can also check with your topic coordinators as well. That would be my recommendation to you guys. So, let's ask it to do the same thing, but a little differently. And we'll go through prompting later as well, but you can be a little bit more specific and get it to do some better things. Because you might look over this and go, it's my first year studying a psychology degree. I'm not familiar with cognitive psychology so far, and this still wasn't a clear enough or a simple enough explanation. So acting as a tutor for a first year university psychology student. Explain the concept of cognitive psychology. So this is a way that you can kind of get it to, I guess, give you information in a slightly different way. This is the great thing about generative AI tools. So in this way, it's acting a little bit more like what you would maybe see in your lectures from your tutors or from your lecturers in the way in which they explain things. So the language is a little bit simpler. It's still got the same key points in there about its, how people think, learn, remember, pay attention, etc. But it gives a little bit more of an actual educational type of response, if that makes sense. And it gives you an analogy, like an example to understand. It actually goes through the different aspects of cognitive psychology and gives you an example. And this can be a more useful way, I think, if you're trying to really understand a concept for a course that you're studying. This would probably be one way in which you might use it. Is that all clear? Do we have any questions about this stuff? How many of you guys have done this before, like typed into ChatGPT or something, what is this? Yeah? I do it all the time. I feel like I used to use Google, and now I don't really go to Google anymore. I just kind of go to like Claude or something. It's interesting how things have changed. I'm showing my age. Cool. All right. Well, I'll hand over now to Kayla, who's going to show you, honestly, again, I have to say that the Learning Buddies are my favorite because they're my child. But if I had to pick another one, Primo would be pretty up there because I think it's very useful.
Awesome. Okay, so Primo Research Assistant. So just to reiterate again, this is the library's research assistant tool. This is our AI tool. So this sits within the library catalogue or the library search, which looks like this. So you can get here, again, from your Okta dashboard, so one-stop shop for all your Flinders systems. So if you were to open up this tile here, just to show you that again, so that's the orange library find it, it'll take you to the website here. And you can see up in the top there is the link to AI Research Assistant, and that'll take you into the tool. I'll just do a quick, because to be quite honest with you, this is how I often get to the library.
I was going to say I usually
I
just
Google
type
library Flinders. And obviously, as you're logged into your Flinders systems and you have been a student for a while, this is probably what you'll end up doing. I show you this because it looks a little bit different, because this actually takes you to our really nice, pretty library website. So the link to the AI tool sits on this page underneath. So you can see AI Research Assistant there. But either way, you'll find it's either going to be up the top or underneath the search there. So you click on that one, and then it's going to take you, it may log you in again, hopefully with your Okta. And yeah, so you'll need your Flinders credentials again to log in, but if you're going via Okta, it should do that all automatically for you. And you'll be taken to a page that looks like this. So this is Primo Research Assistant. So very simple. What is your research question? I guess the thing, I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, it's a slightly different tool than the normal generative AI tools where we can give it instructions, where we can tell it to act in a certain way or be something, or tell it to generate an image. This is a bit different. This is very much a search tool. So when you're putting in a question, it is very much like putting in a question. So I think of it more like pretend it's Google. So you can put in your assignment or research question, your research question, and away you go. So as an example, I've got how has Cool. So how has cognitive psychology contributed to our understanding of attention and memory? So that's a research question, right? My assignment question might be worded a little bit differently. It might be telling me to search for and write an essay on cognitive psychology and attention and memory. So it might be worded a little bit differently. So phrase it as a research question or a Google search, if that makes sense. At this stage, you can actually apply a few filters here as well. So for example, this before you've even searched, you could change it to just find journal articles for you or peer-reviewed literature. So if you were doing an assignment and you were told to refer to 3 peer-reviewed journal articles, you could save yourself a little bit of time at this point and tick that box. You could also specify the date. So this is the publication date. So again, what Primo Research Assistant is doing is it is searching across library literature, so books, journal articles, mostly ebooks and those online things as well. So if you need recent literature, you could go the last 5 years and that's all it will show you. All right. So we'll just hit search at this stage and we can see that the tool is working. So what this tool does, like I said, is a bit different. So it takes your research question there, it then transforms it into a search that a library database can understand, and it will then find you 5 sources which are considered to be like the top 5, so the most relevant. Relevancy in this case probably means that it has most of the words in your question in like the title or the abstract. That's how I would assess that. So that's your top 5 sources up there. And then it also generates this overview of sources for you. So this is kind of like a big abstract that kind of answers your question. But what it does more importantly is it gives you some examples. You can see these small little numbers here. So every time it refers to something in this overview, it links up to the number of the source where it got that information from, which makes it really easy for you to follow up. So that's why it's such a good tool, right? It's searching across that academic information and you can clearly see where it is pulling that information from as well. So yep, you can click on number 5 and that opens it up there. So once it's brought back a lot of books. For instance, if it's a journal article, you want to view the full text of this eventually, which I hope you do, you can click on the link there and that'll open it straight up for you. And away you go, and that shows the journal article there. There's a couple of other things this tool can do as well. So you can see down the bottom we've got related research questions. I really love this feature and I think it's really useful, particularly if you're at the starting stages of an assignment. If this overview or these 5 sources aren't hitting the mark for you, you might want to explore one of these. It's just a rephrase of what you've asked the tool, and it will probably give you 5 different sources and the overview might be slightly different as well. So it's a way of exploring it as well. It could be really useful to your brainstorming because it might make you think about your topic in a slightly different way, which can be really helpful for students. And last but not least, we have this button here to view related results for your your library search. So this gives you 5, right? And for full disclosure, this overview is only generating information that is from those 5 sources and from their abstracts, nowhere else, which is great because you can follow up and see where the information is coming from, but that also means that it could be quite limited. There might be other articles and books out there that answer your question a bit better, and that's fine. So you can click on this button here to view related results on your library search, and that'll chuck you back into our library search page. You can see in this box here a very long, complicated looking search. This is, back in the day, you used to have to do this all manually. So the tool, that's what the tool does. It takes your question, transforms it into that, and now you can explore well over hundreds and thousands of results here as well. So you could use the filters, just find articles and go from there. So it's a great way to get started on your assignment. And if you find the article that you need from it, then cool, you're all good to go. Any questions about Primo? Yes?
Not quite sure how to phrase it.
That's all right.
Let's say, because I'm in psychology, by the way.
Yes.
Let's say I'm in one of the topics and I have like 500 other students with me.
Yes.
And we all get the same assignment.
Yep.
And we all have the same question.
Yep.
Same assignment. So we, let's say 400 out of the 500 put that same question there.
Yep.
So we're all probably going to get the same 5 articles. So
Yes.
doesn't it increase my chances of being similar to my other students?
Yes.
Makes sense?
Yes, that's a really good question and it's really interesting. I think we've tested this not with 500 students, with a lot of library staff to see what would happen if we all put in the same question. Because, and not to get too technical, I say it searches across the library, but it's actually searching something much bigger than that. It's searching the Central Discovery Index, which is the layer that sits, so this is Flinders Library, right? So what sits underneath that is a huge database that a lot of academic libraries use, where there's a lot of information. So you might actually get there'll be slight variance every time you ask the question and when different people ask it as well. So yes and no, but that is a really great point. And yes, it's going to keep pushing. Sometimes it does keep pushing certain sources too. Like sometimes I've found even when I've asked it to try again, which you can do as well, it'll still, where am I? My goodness me. And they're all called library. There we go. There is this button here where you can ask it to try again. So if you don't like that overview, and then you press in here, it'll keep that up the top there for you so you can see that first version and those first 5 sources. It's going to hopefully give you something a little bit different. You might notice that 1 or 2, they look pretty different to me. That's pretty good. So you can see there it's given you 5 different sources. And the reason for that is when we hop back in, I'm not sure if I brought up my results, but when here. So every time it's generating a slightly different search string. So it's using slightly different keywords and things like that. So you might get different results to your peers. You will get different results each time you use it. Does that sort of explain your question?
Nothing to worry about?
It's nothing to worry about, I guess, beyond, like, as long as you're using the information correctly. If you decide that you want to cite a particular article for an essay, if you understand that and you've engaged with it and you referenced it correctly and it all good to go, I don't see how that would be like a huge problem. If your research process is thorough, it's unlikely you're going to look exactly like another student, I would say. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah. I might also just mention that I did a psychology degree. So you are right that oftentimes there are pretty much the same questions, 500 students doing it. People marking those assignments are well aware of the fact that they're probably going to see similar sources popping up. We would almost expect certain sources to probably pop up because we have these key sort of theories and key authors in the field. So that's not necessarily an issue as long as you have correctly paraphrased the information, you've done a thorough research process and you've referenced correctly. It's not really a problem. Yeah.
How do we cite the use of primer?
So yes, as like you would reference acknowledge, well, it's sort of more of an acknowledgement of AI tools. Yeah. So you can put it in there in your acknowledgement that you've used Primo Research Assistant to help you guide your research process, for example, is something you could say.
And you might put the question that you used. So how has cognitive psychology contributed? You might say, I used this question, and then I looked at the sources.
So if assignment says that you're not allowed to use AI for finding resources, then you cannot use Prime.
Absolutely, if it's that specific.
Yeah.
There are instances where, usually much later in degrees, where students do get assessed on their research skills, right? So you might not be able to use an AI assistance tool like this one. Yeah.
If you're ever unsure, though, just email your
ask
TC
them.
and just say, is this okay to use? And they'll let you know.
And they'll know all about this, so it's good. All right. I think I'm handing back over to you for some reading.
Yes, so, yes, and then I'll get into the, okay. So if we go into, we might actually just use one of these articles, to be honest. Let me see if I can pick one. Attentional switch. This sounds, complicated enough. Let's go into this one here. So I guess it's going to prompt me to log in. I'm not really sure why, but let's see if it. I know. Sometimes it will do this, even if you go from Flinders Library, it will sometimes prompt you to log in as well, because these places where these are stored have their own sort of thing as well. So you might just have to log in quickly. There we go. Cool. So this is the full article here. You can see it is very large. Yeah, very, very long. This might take you a long time to get through. Interestingly enough, I didn't know that Research Assistant did this.
That is
this
actually
is cool.
Not Research Assistant.
Is it not? Oh, this is their own I see. Okay, this is ProQuest's version of it, which I have not seen before, so that's interesting. Yeah, so we might be able to, up here, if you see the chat panel for Copilot, this is in Edge. I think you can add this to other browsers as well. I use Firefox sometimes, and I think I added something like this. But essentially, you can ask it to summarize the page that it's on. Although normally it does, I guess it's prompting me to do this here. Normally it does say something about the information that it's selected at the moment, but we'll see if it works. If not, you can select information specifically and it will know. No, it got it. That's perfect. Cool. So as you can see, this summary here is a far quicker way to get the key information out of this article. Now, this can be really useful in your research process when you're trying to filter through lots and lots of different papers and trying to find the ones that are most relevant to what you actually want to talk about in your essay. I did my undergrad in the days before generative AI, and I can tell you that I spent hours like combing through different articles and going, nope, that's not helpful, that's not helpful. This can be a quicker way for you to get a sense of, is this actually going to be helpful for me? The key point to remember here, though, is that I wouldn't entirely rely on everything that this has given you. It might have missed really important details. It can sometimes get it wrong. So I would use this as a starting point, read it over, and say you actually do want to be looking into ASM, or you are interested in talking about the default mode network, for example. You know now that this talks specifically about the default mode network, and you can then read the full article painstakingly. It'll probably take you a little while because this is a big one. That is how I would use it in terms of helping you to read and summarize information. It is always important that you do go over it yourself, though, especially when you're then bringing it into an essay where you're paraphrasing some of that information and referencing this source. You need to make sure that you're representing the source correctly when you talk about it. But yeah, it's at least a very good starting point. It gives you a one-sentence takeaway. Obviously, that was the basic sort of standard one, summarize the main points, but you could very easily prompt it to say, can you summarize this page for a first-year psychology student? I guess that would work, yeah. Or like in the language understandable for a first-year student. But so this is the same information, but it's just presented a little differently in terms of it's not going into some pretty complex concepts up here. It's explaining those same concepts, but it's doing it in a way that's probably a little bit more accessible when you're first learning some of these things. And it's organizing the information in a slightly better way. So that's one way in which you might want to use something like this. So I think you can use this in other browsers, but you'd have to look into how you actually bring it in. If not, you can use Edge, depending on if you have a general aversion to using Microsoft Edge. I do, but I'm kind of forced to use it. So cool. Do we have any questions about this?
Not about that, but it's kind of related.
Yep.
Have you heard of Notebook LM?
Yes, I have. And we don't talk about Notebook LM in this one specifically, but that is also a really great tool where you can upload several resources and get it to give you summaries, and you can prompt it and stuff like that. Yeah. You can build your own little sort of language model.
There's also an option to make it as a podcast.
Yes. Yeah.
So if I'm going to use Notebook LM, I still need to acknowledge it?
I would, yes. Yeah. And just explain, I got the information to be transferred into a podcast format so I could listen to it. Yeah, that's fine. Cool. All right. Now I get to talk about my children. So every parent's dream. So I might close a few of these tabs because this is a nightmare for me. This is so overwhelming. Okay. So the learning buddies. All right. So like I said, when you want to add them to your Copilot platform, I would recommend just saving like the general Copilot as a favorite or whatever in your browser, because then it's very easy to get to. And once you've added these in, you can always access them again, just here in the sidebar. You can pin them as well. I think maybe it might do it with Feedback Buddy, because my youngest child might not be installed. There we go. So you can see here that when you first click on it, it will say, for me it says open, because I've already installed this into mine. For when it's brand new, it'll say like install or add or something to that effect. But here you can just click on open, and you'll see that it takes me to Feedback Buddy. Now, I'm not going to do Feedback Buddy unless we have time at the end, because it takes a little bit longer to do that process. It takes a bit more time to think. But Study Buddy can be really, really helpful. And I think the really key thing about Study Buddy, so we've showed you things like general Copilot chat today, where there's no guardrails or anything related to academic integrity or independent learning, things like that. I have spent hours with these tools to test them, refine them, and get them to a point where you can, or it is explicitly instructed to encourage your own independent skill development and learning, and to sort of reduce any risk of crossing any academic integrity lines, essentially. So if you want to use a tool that is a bit safer, I guess, in terms of not accidentally going beyond what's permitted, this can be a really great option. So the thing to remember, though, about Study Buddy and the Learning Buddies more generally is that they're set up to help with general academic skills, so writing, referencing, time management, organization, those sorts of things. It is not set up to help with discipline-specific content. So I can't really ask Study Buddy, I can try, but I can't really ask Study Buddy about cognitive psychology concepts and things like that, because that's not what it's designed to do. If you want information about that, you can go to Primo Research Assistant, you can check your course materials, things like that. Study Buddy is more like a learning advisor, like you would find in the library in the Learning Lounge, and it's there to help you understand certain study-related concepts. Does that make sense? Yes, cool. All right, so what I'm going to get Study Buddy to help me with today is to reference in APA 7. And there's some specific guidelines and stuff that I've set up for Study Buddy, because I think referencing is probably the most common query that we have from students in the Learning Lounge and things like that. Referencing can be really challenging. I hate writing references. But when you see Study Buddy respond, there's a couple things. So one thing that I will get you to pay attention to here is you can see that there's the little icon and it says Study Buddy. So when you're using Study Buddy, it will have its name here. Same with Feedback Buddy. If you're not using these tools, it will just say Copilot. That's a really important thing to keep in mind, because Copilot obviously will do things for you that Study Buddy will refuse to do. So you might be in general Copilot asking it questions, thinking it's Study Buddy and being like, oh my God, Study Buddy did something it wasn't meant to do. So just double check that up here, it does actually say Study Buddy or Feedback Buddy. It will also give you this sort of introductory thing about who Study Buddy is, what it can help with, and point you towards a couple of really important resources about AI and using AI here at Flinders. It gives you a recommended citation in APA 7. Bearing in mind, not everybody uses APA 7, but you can just sort of use the same information to convert it into, say, Harvard or whatever else you're asked to use. It will also give you a bit of a disclaimer explaining things like GenAI has its limitations. You know, this doesn't replace speaking to your tutors and topic coordinators, things like that. It also gives you information about the Learning Lounge as well. Mm-hmm. So if you want some in-person support, it guides you towards where you can go for that too. In terms of referencing though, you can see here that it has given me the general structure for how to cite a book chapter in APA 7. So it hasn't provided me with a specific example. If I was to type in an actual reference to this and say, reference this for me, it will say no. And it will say, this is the general structure. Go back over your citation and check that you've actually put the information in the correct locations. It will give you some very key things to remember. So things like, do you have your 4 main elements, author, title, etc.? Have you double-checked whether the book title is italicized, whether there's an editor's name, or if it's correctly sort of included, things like that. So instead of doing it for you, it's prompting you to check your own work and see where you might have missed something or what you might need to remember in that particular case. Do we have any questions about this so far? No? So let's push it a little bit further and let's ask it. So I need to write an essay on the theories of ADHD, but I don't know where to start. And let's see what it says. So again, every single time you start a new conversation, it will give you this same spiel at the beginning, and then it will give you your answer eventually. It's a bit slow this morning, I think. All right. Here we go. So again, you can see that it hasn't started to write anything for you. It hasn't necessarily pointed you in the direction of any key theories of ADHD and stuff like that, because you're expected to sort of go and do that yourself. But it has sort of given you some guidance on what you could start with. So you might want to start with an introduction, body, conclusion, what the introduction should include, what the body should include, planning your research, and outlining your essay. And you might say, well, can you help me with an outline for my essay? But it can also give you could go with the second option as well of researching theories on ADHD, and what it would do is it would probably give you some keywords that you could search in the Flinders Library, and it would point you towards the Flinders Library. Mm-hmm. I was hoping it would go a little bit quicker so that I could really. It usually does. It usually is a lot quicker than this, but it's of course, it's got performance anxiety, I guess, I don't know. So you can see here again, it has given an outline, but it's quite general. So, and it's explained more of the key concepts of writing an essay, so things like thesis statements, main points, how you would write an introduction, rather than giving you an actual outline for an essay on ADHD. So it has also provided some reflective questions, I guess, to get you thinking a little bit more about your work. So what theories does your assignment ask you to cover? Have you identified them? What is your thesis statement, etc.? If I say, can you write my introduction for me? This is where it will get a little bit more aggressive. No, it won't. It'll be firm, but it's very nice. Again, even at the bottom here, it says, what theories have you come across so far in your research? That's probably a good place to start. So here you go. So I'm sorry, but I can't do this for you. That's your work, and doing it yourself is really important for your learning process. But what I can do is guide you through how to do it. So here's what a strong introduction needs to include. A handy tip, maybe write your introduction last. Once you know the ending, it's easier to write the beginning, etc. And then it sort of goes over what a thesis statement is, or starts to sort of talk about a thesis statement. So this is a good alternative, I guess, if you want to make sure that you're using AI in a very sort of supporting your learning kind of way, rather than just getting it to do things for you. This is a good option, and I would highly recommend using it. So I might leave the demo sort of there for now, because we've got a couple more things that we might go through quickly with the slides, and I am conscious that good thing Kat booked an hour and a half, that's for sure. All right, so I'll hand over to Kayla here to talk about what you should not use AI tools for.
That's it. Never. No. Okay, so I guess the first big one is what to not use it for. And when we're talking about AI tools here, very specifically talking about those big Gen AI tools like your Copilots and so forth as well. But we never want to use them to find information to rely on or cite in an assessment. And that's for a number of reasons, but essentially it comes down to the way those tools work and how they process information. But a big one that I'd also highlight, because it's very important when you're new and heading into university, is to remember that these tools, so Copilot, ChatGPT, etc., are trained on mostly free, basically information that is out there on the web, that is not behind a publisher paywall. Now at uni, you're expected to be referencing the work of like academic scholars and journal articles and book chapters. That is what you will be assessed on, essentially. Now, if these tools are producing information that is not based on that at all, that's not going to get you very far at all, is it? So that's like a big one, just from a very like logical kind of like start point. So you don't want to reference what comes up within an AI tool, because it probably won't be the kind of source that your lecturers are indeed looking for. The other thing to sort of think about as well is that they're often, they can be trained on information that is old, that is out of date. It can be biased. It can also be, and I think this is becoming more common now that its mistakes are becoming less obvious sometimes, it's just the context. Like it can present information to you, a statistic or like some kind of anecdote or whatever, that is just missing really key context there. And if you take that as fact, basically, not only are you talking about something in your assessments incorrectly, but that has steered your entire learning and understanding of a topic down the wrong path. So it's just not your one-stop shop, and it's definitely not what you want to be citing in your reference lists. So kind of related to that is finding references as well. It's not going to find those references for you that you need. What you can do instead, if you want that AI assistance, is to use a tool like Prima Research Assistant that is designed to find you those references, those journal articles and those books. Or you can search the library yourself, which is still quite easy to do, or use a research database as well. I think that's pretty much all for that searching sort of side. Did anyone have any questions about, using AI in search and sort of what I've spoken about there? All good?
Do you have a question? Yes.
Talk about the outdated data. So is there a way, what's the year for the current data that we need to do research on, like 10 years back or 5 years back?
Yeah, I guess. So on one level, in answer to that question, sometimes in a specific assignment, you'll be asked to find information that's been published from the last 5 years. So tools like Library Search or Prima Research Assistant allow you to specify that, so you're only encountering that information. But also with that as well, the reason I sort of brought it up as to why we don't then rely on information that's generated by ChatGPT or Copilot is because it's trained on all of that sort of free information. And what I've found often that it does is it will refer to sources that sound academic, but these are often quite old studies that are very prolific around the internet. So it's probably, and you could therefore fall in that trap of referencing or talking about something that has been discredited maybe in 20 years, like who knows. Does that sort of make sense? But yeah, as a term for an actual standard of how many years, that'll depend on your discipline and your assignment and all of those things. Yes, yeah. Exactly, yeah. Research moves, yeah. Exactly, yeah. So things change, and that's exactly why we can't see that research chain when we use these tools. We can't see how, things have changed and moved forward since. Great question, yeah.
Really good question.
Anything else? All good with that? Awesome.
Yes, for the last point, I think me and Study Buddy have kind of made that pretty clear. I would strongly discourage anyone from using AI, these general AI tools especially, from rewriting text that you have written. And the reason for this is, well, two things. One, it can write it back to you in a tone that is not quite your own. It can sound very general, very vague, and it won't really replicate your voice very well. And the reason this is important is because when you are writing, it is important to sort of develop your own academic voice. The other sort of, it's still related to this point, is you are here learning how to be in your discipline and learning the content as a part of your discipline, but you are also learning skills around academic writing. And you might have, depending on your discipline, you might have specific types of writing styles that you need to learn, like report writing, or in psychology, for example, you'll get very used to writing essays and literature reviews and things like that. And it's important for you to learn those skills because it's a part of your discipline. And if you are having AI sort of rewrite for you or do that writing for you, you're not developing that skill yourself. And it's important to do that. So what I would recommend doing is you can obviously get in contact with the SLSS. You can see a learning advisor in the Learning Lounge. They can help you with things like that. And then the learning buddies, both of them can technically help you with your writing. Study Buddy, you can copy and paste, say, like a paragraph in, and that would be fine. And then Feedback Buddy can actually give you feedback on your entire assignment if you have finished a draft and you want some feedback on it. And then it's up to you to decide the changes that you want to make. And instead of it doing that editing process for you, it's more like you're going through a process of peer review instead. You're getting someone to sort of give you a bit of feedback, and then you're working with that feedback to develop your own skills. Does that make sense? Yeah? Question? Yeah? Yeah, Feedback Buddy, yeah.
Say you've done a draft, submitted it, and said, maybe look at this section amend here.
Mm-hmm.
Can you later go back and put both versions in and say, has this improved from my previous version?
Great question. At this stage, no. It sort of works with one sort of assignment for the entire sort of conversation. But that's definitely a feature that I've been looking into to see if there's a way that we could do something like that, because that's a great thing. But honestly, what you would do at the moment is that you would just go and start a new conversation, and you would just say, like, here. And you might, if you want to, you can get Feedback Buddy, because it will give you initial feedback. Then you can ask questions. So you might say in the first question, can you give me like a 1 to 2 sentence summary of the main points of feedback that you gave me? You can then put that in your next conversation and say, this is the feedback you gave me before. Do you think I've improved, or do you think these points have been addressed? Yeah, so that's one way you could do it. Yeah. Cool. Great questions. All right. So writing prompts, I think this is me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think at this point, everyone's probably written a prompt into an AI tool. And what I will say is that these are great rules for when you want the AI to do something really specific. If you're like me, you're probably not going to do this every single time you write a prompt. You'll probably write in the bare absolute minimum and see what it comes out with, which for the most part, most of the time, is probably fine. But if you're finding that the AI is not necessarily giving you the type of output that you are actually looking for, it can be really useful to sort of break it down into these 4 parts. So sort of clarifying what the task is, explaining a concept, for example, what role do you want it to act as? This can help it sort of tailor its language in a certain way. The context, I need it for my psychology essay, I need to understand this. And then the output can be also a very useful way to tell it what to give you a little bit more specifically. Has anyone tried this out before, where they actually write out the sort of like the role and the type? Yeah? Do you do that every time? No? I think I try to see like the very bare minimum amount of words that I can give an AI and see like what it will do for me. But obviously, yeah, this can be useful in certain contexts as well. Do we have any questions about writing prompts? Is everyone pretty familiar at this point with writing prompts and AIs? Yeah. It's usually a back and forth conversation of like, this isn't what I wanted. You need to give me this instead. If you start with this, sometimes it can be better. Cool. Evaluating. Is this me as well? I think it is.
I think
No,
it is.
it's you.
It's me.
It's you.
Okay.
Go ahead. Take the floor.
You go back. Okay. So in addition to incorrect information, there's a couple of other things to kind of think about with potential limitations here as well. So this is kind of more of a summary, right? So tools are only as good as the information that they were trained on. I've talked about that in more specific sort of ways, whether it's because they're only going to be trained on free information, they're not being trained on academic journals and the things you're meant to be referencing. Also, if it's incorrect or biased or misleading. And this other one, which I really like as well, is that tools have their own style of writing. I'm sure we're all getting pretty good at being presented with something now and being like, that's AI. I'm reading that paragraph of text and I can tell that's AI. They have a specific tone that's almost like devoid of tone. I'm not sure how to explain it. And that doesn't usually match an academic style of writing. It's usually very confident. It's quite, it's not very open-minded. All those things to sort of think about as well. And it's definitely not your style of writing, which is what we want to see. And the final thing is that they lack critical thinking. They don't understand their outputs. This may seem really obvious, but I like to remind people of it as well, because we've always been used to, prior to these Gen AI tools, encountering information that has been created by someone. Whatever that intent was, it's had someone sit down, think about it, maybe research it, and they've had that interaction with that information that's not here. So it's a very different experience when if you go to an AI tool, you're having to bring that ability to it, because it is the one thing it can't really replicate. It's going to do what it's good at. It's going to give you an answer. It's going to produce something, and it's going to say it very confidently. They don't understand their outputs. They just can't do that. That's up to you to kind of interact with that stage of things. So before relying on the output, never mind, there are things you can do. Like I said, you need to be ready to verify and check the accuracy of this information. So basically, do some cross-checking, read something else, go to more trustworthy sources, get started with an AI tool, and then go elsewhere. So you could search Primo Research Assistant to find scholarly sources. You could use some of the keywords and key terms that you found using that Gen AI tool, but you're then going deeper. Even just doing a web search, I do this all the time if I've used a general AI tool, and it's so easy to do, right? Particularly if it's spouted a statistic at you or something, just copy and paste, have a little read through, see what is being said out on the internet, and follow any links to sources cited. This is always a fun activity. See where it's going to take you. If it does cite something, and then independently evaluate what is there and whether that's good enough for a reference yourself, or again, trying to find similar information through the library and other trusted sources as well. Any questions about any of those? That's kind of just a nice recap, I guess, of everything we've been saying so far. And finally,
has anyone actually tried to get, say, ChatGPT to find them sources, and then they've looked up?
A couple of have tried ChatGPT before, yeah, but I don't think Claude I haven't tried. No.
Yeah. I don't know. I have before, just as like a little bit of a test, and then you actually go and look for this very confident source that has given you this academic paper. You follow the link and it takes you to either a completely different article that's entirely unrelated, or the link just doesn't exist at all. And you're like, I don't know where you got this from. It seems to have a bit of an issue when it comes to finding sources and hallucinating sources and stuff like that. So very important that you double check. So I did go over acknowledging AI just earlier. But just to reinforce this, it is not always going to be in your assignment instructions that you have to include this, but I honestly would just recommend to all of you to put it in there anyway, even if they don't necessarily ask you to do that. So it can just help protect you against any sort of misunderstanding between you and your marker or your TC about how you might have used an AI tool. So should provide a declaration that sort of is just like, I acknowledge the use of blah, blah, blah in this sort of process. This is an example prompt that I used, etc. And like, yeah, either at the end of your reference list, sometimes it's before, whatever, wherever you put it isn't really that important, but just including it is. You should also ensure that you cite any content developed by these tools. So if you developed an outline, for example, say that it produced an outline for you, and then you then worked from that. And some assignment instructions will ask you to actually cite the tool that you use specifically. So that's why in StudyBuddy, for example, there's that APA citation. Not all TCs will expect you to do this, but in some contexts, they will ask you to actually provide a citation for the tool that you use. So that might be StudyBuddy, Grammarly, ChatGPT, so on and so forth. So this is an example of an acknowledgement here. So just I acknowledge the use of Copilot Chat to generate ideas for my essay structure using this prompt. I critically analysed the output. I kept 2 of the suggestions. I then asked for further clarification on those 2 outputs before then using the suggested terminology to begin a scoping search on the literature. The rest of the output is my own work. So screenshots of my interactions with Copilot Chat have been provided if you have done that. Like I said, you don't always have to put screenshots in your actual assignment underneath what you've done. But it is useful to even just keep those screenshots in case the TC says, hey, can you just show me a little bit more about how you actually use this tool? It can just help you. Cool. Do we have any questions on this? Is this pretty straightforward? Yeah? It can be useful if you, as you're working through your assignment, because obviously you might write this at the end, it can be useful if you just keep notes of how you used it as you're going. So you might want to just keep dot points at the end of your assignment. I used it for this, or I put this prompt in, or this is what I did. And then you've got that information there ready to go when you actually write the acknowledgement. So we hope that there's never a situation where you're sort of having to deal with the whole academic misconduct thing. But there are definitely some things that you can do that help protect you and help sort of clear up any confusion, I guess, if this ever happens. And it does happen. There have been students that even I have had to send an email and say, hey, there's potential AI use in your assignment because we use tools like Turnitin to look at that, but it can also make mistakes. So because of that, it just helps to have these things so that when you get asked, or if you get asked, you have that information readily available. And usually it ends up being an email back from your TC going, oh, no worries, all good, you're fine. So like I said, keeping notes about any tools that you used and how you used them. Keep a log of any prompts that you gave to the AI. Keeping notes about how you found your references can also be really helpful, especially if you use things like Primo Research Assistant. Like I said, you might put the question that you put into Primo. You might keep that as a note and say, this is what I used. Always make sure that any of the work that you're citing is legitimate. So like I said, if you use an AI tool and it gives you a source, make sure that that source exists and that it's real. Keep drafts as you edit your work. So you might just sort of, each time you open the document, you might start a new version. So you have that previous version. You can actually show how you've developed that assignment over a week or so. Hopefully you're spending a little bit more than a week on your assignments, but time is limited. If you're using AI to improve your written work, I would strongly, strongly recommend, even using free tools like Grammarly, I would strongly recommend that you keep a version before you've applied any AI to your writing, and then you have the version after. So that way, if you do get asked, how did you use it to assist or edit your writing, you can show the 2